Hey, welcome back to the Tool Shed. In this tool, which I call content or context, I want to share with you a way that I navigate both through the world, my life, but especially helping other people. So, a teacher of mine once said that it's easier as a rabbi or as a speaker to change your audience than your talk, right? And that's when I started to think about, that's interesting. And as a rabbi, at least back in the day when I was one, I would be locked into the same audience week after week, and I'd have to change the talk for like 20 years to be original. Now, when I talk about the Enneagram or Man Uprising or Viktor Frankl, I got a handful of talks, but by and large, I'm changing my audience, not the talk. So that's a content context problem, or not a problem, it's a scenario. The audience is a context, the talk is the content. This happens over and over and over again in our lives beyond just public speaking. People come to me all the time and they want to, know, like marriage as an example. Is the problem the marriage, and therefore they should change their context and get remarried, or first get divorced, hopefully, and then get remarried? And that's a changing your context. Or is it a content problem? Is it the person, right? Your wife or your husband or partner, whoever, or both. Usually it's both. But there are times when the content is just beyond repair. It just is. I wish it weren't so. I believe in divorce at the right time for the right reasons. And I think it's oftentimes a lot less than the way it's used, but that's not for me to judge. What I do know is sometimes a relationship is beyond repair and the context needs to change because the content can't. I was working with a guy a while back who midlife, 50-ish, and was talking about changing his career. Now, I said, at least give me a couple months and let's explore the question, is it a content problem or a context problem? Because oftentimes, our go-to strategy is, I'm just going to change the context. I'm just going to go find a new job. I'm going to find a new profession. Now, that can work really well when you're 15 or when you're 20 or 25, but when you get into 50, you got to be very mindful of, is it a content or context problem? Because, I saw with my father, many of you know the tragic story of my father's suicide. He kept believing it was a context problem. Change your wife, change your job, change your profession, change your town. And he was chasing rainbows. It never ends when it's a content problem and not a context problem. The alternative can be true, as I shared with you, right? There comes a time when it is a content problem. Look, I did this. I was a rabbi. I had a content problem. I stopped believing in what I was doing. I still identify as a Jew. It's my culture. It's my ethnicity. It's my, part of my identity. But spiritually, I'm a mutt. I'm all over the place. I don't color inside the lines. And I just allowed myself to color free. And so I had to change my context. I couldn't do that as a rabbi. I certainly wasn't willing to fake it like a lot of clergy out there. And so I had to change my context. Now I changed it a little too radically, but nonetheless, I really identified this is genuinely a content challenge and I can't fix that. There's nothing I can do to get back to the place that I was 20 years prior when I set out on that path. And at that point, it was my content. The content changed. So that happens at midlife. You may very well say, it's time for me to stop being a police officer and it's now time for me to be an artist. And that's a content, I don't want to say problem, it's a content shift. No amount of changing your context is going to change that if all that means is you're moving around from, police precinct to police precinct trying to find a better fit. You got a content challenge and we got to address that. But if you do have the right content, your profession still speaks to you, your wife still speaks to you, your life still speaks to you, then start where you stand. Address the content, right? Look at it. Find new ways to explore it, to experience, to express it, if all things equal, and don't change your context. Again, sometimes you do have to change your context. So the gentleman that I was working with decided prior to meeting me that he had to leave being a police officer, and he went out into the world now and He's looking for ways to express his art in the world. So his content had changed. He needed a context to go out into the world and deliver it. When you're standing at the crossroads, when you're facing a challenging situation, spend some time, dig down, and ask yourself, do I have a content issue? Do I have a context issue? Because no amount of changing the context will ever work if it's a content problem, and vice versa. And that alignment is everything. And that's a tool for you to take on the road as you make big life decisions, content or context.